there, and welcome to the Sleepy History Channel. Tonight we travel back through deep time, far beyond the reach of any memory, to meet a small and tender traveler that has been crossing the sky for longer than the mountains we know by name. Imagine, for a moment, a golden field in the slow light of a late afternoon, the grasses bending under a warm and patient wind, and there, drifting low over the seed heads, a single butterfly, its wing a deep autumn orange, veined with black, catching the last of the sun so that for an instant it seems lit from within. It does not hurry. It rises, it falls, it lets the air carry it, as if it has all the time in the world. And in a sense, it does, for the creature you are watching belongs to a lineage far older than it looks. The monarch, this delicate scrap of orange and night, has been flying across the world while the Rocky Mountains were still rising from the plain, pushed slowly upward over tens of millions of years, long after butterflies had already learned to ride the wind. Tonight we will follow it gently, through its quiet beginnings, through the strange and lovely chapters of its life, and across a journey so vast it spans whole generations. What does it mean, you might wonder, to carry a map inside your body that no one ever taught you to read? To set out toward a forest you have never seen, guided by the angle of the sun and a faint magnetic whisper in the earth, arriving at last in a place your great-grandparents knew but you never did. How does such a small thing hold so much certainty? For this little insect carries within it millions of years of quiet evolutionary wisdom, knowledge written not in words but in wing and instinct, passed down across countless soft and unremarkable lifetimes until it reached the one drifting over the field tonight. It is a small miracle, and like so many small miracles, it asks nothing of us but a moment of attention. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, simply settle in. Let your shoulders soften and your breathing slow, and let the golden field blur at its edges. We are in no rush tonight. The butterfly is in no rush either. Somewhere far below it, the milkweed is growing, and the seasons are turning as they have turned for ages beyond counting. And so our story begins, quietly, beneath the wide and fading autumn sky, with a single orange wing rising and falling on the warm and unhurried air. Imagine the air of a world more than 100 million years gone, a Cretaceous afternoon thick with the breath of an older earth. The light is greener here, filtered through the broad fronds of ferns and the dark-needled crowns of conifers that have ruled the land for longer than the mind can comfortably hold. There are no meadows yet, no drifts of colour across an open field, no soft perfume rising on the warm wind. The forests are vast and somewhat sombre, built of cycads and ginkgos and towering cone-bearing trees, and the green of them is the green of patience, of plants that reproduce by spore and by naked seed, scattering their hopes to the wind without ceremony. There is a stillness in such a place that the modern world rarely offers, a deep green hush broken only by the rustle of fronds and the slow creak of ancient wood. If you could stand beneath that ancient canopy, you would feel how quiet the world's invention can be, how the largest changes often arrive without a sound. You would breathe air heavier and warmer than our own, scented with resin and damp earth and the faint mineral coolness of unhurried streams. For somewhere in this green and wind-blown stillness, a small revolution was beginning, one that would eventually paint the entire planet in new colors and shape the very ancestors of the butterfly you have been carrying in your thoughts. The flowering plants were stirring, the first of the angiosperms, and with them the slow, patient bargain that would remake the living world. They were rare at first, scattered and unremarkable among the great cone-bearing giants, easy to overlook, and yet they carried within them the seed of everything tender and bright that was still to come. But before the flowers, there were the moths. Long before any butterfly opened its wings to the sun, its ancestors moved through the darkness, small and dust-soft and easy to overlook. The earliest members of the order we call the Lepidoptera were creatures of the night, moth-like in form and habit, with narrow wings clothed in tiny overlapping scales that gave the whole lineage its name. For Lepidoptera means simply the scale-winged. They did not yet drink nectar, because there was as yet little nectar to drink. They fed instead on what the old world offered, on the spores and soft tissues of the non-flowering plants, on the moisture gathered in the hollows of leaves, on the liquids that seeped from wounded stems and fallen fruit. Picture them as faint pale shapes against the deeper dark, fluttering between the fern fronds in the cool of a Cretaceous night, guided by the scent of decay and the dim glow of an ancient moon. Their wings made no sound that any ear could catch, only the softest stir of air, a whisper of motion at the edge of the dark. They were modest creatures living modest lives, and yet within their delicate bodies they carried the deep blueprint of everything that would follow. The coiled possibility of a lineage that would one day cross continents on paper-thin wings. There is a tenderness in imagining them, these small forgotten ancestors, going about the patient business of living with no notion of the grandeur their descendants would one day achieve. It is a humbling thought that the grandeur of the monarch's great migration began in such quiet and unremarkable company, in soft-winged things that no one would have noticed, even if there had been anyone there to notice them at all. And then the world began to bloom. The proliferation of the flowering plants was, in the long calendar of life, remarkably swift. So swift that one of the great minds of natural science once called it an abominable mystery, unable to explain how these new plants spread and diversified with such astonishing speed. Across the Cretaceous, the angiosperms rose from rarity to dominance, and as they rose, they brought with them something the world had never seen in such abundance: the flower itself, an organ of sweetness and signal and reward. A flower is a kind of invitation written in color and scent, and it asks for something in return. It offers nectar, a drop of sugar-rich liquid tucked deep within its petals, and it offers pollen, the golden dust of its own continuation, and in exchange, it asks only to be visited, to have that pollen carried from one bloom to another so that seeds might form. Each blossom became a small beacon in the green, a point of color calling out across the undergrowth to any creature with eyes to see it and senses to be moved. This was a new kind of pressure upon the small-scale winged creatures of the night and the slowly waking day. Those whose mouthparts could reach a little deeper, whose senses could detect the new scents, whose bodies could gather and carry the clinging gold of pollen, found before them an ocean of unclaimed sweetness. And so, across uncounted generations, the feeding strategies of the Lepidoptera began to change, reshaped by the simple fact that the world now offered nectar to any creature patient and well formed enough to take it. Slowly, over spans of time too vast for the heart to truly hold, the night feeders edged toward the day, drawn upward into the light by the promise of the flowers. The long coiled tongue, the proboscis that a butterfly unrolls like a thread to sip from the heart of a flower, is a slow answer to that ancient invitation, an instrument shaped by millions of years of quiet negotiation between insect and bloom. How faint, And how old are the first whispers of this lineage in the stone? The fossil record of soft and delicate creatures is always sparse, for wings and tongues and slender bodies do not lend themselves to the slow patience of fossilization the way bones and shells do. A butterfly is mostly air and gossamer, a thing built to vanish, and the wonder is not that so few have been preserved, but that any trace of them remains at all. Yet the earth has kept a few fragile pages from the very beginning. In sediments laid down in the age before the Cretaceous, in the deep time of the Jurassic, and even at its threshold, researchers have found tiny fossilized wing scales, those same microscopic shingles that clothe the wings of every moth and butterfly alive today. Pressed into ancient rock, no larger than motes of dust, they are the oldest known trace of the scale-winged lineage, a whisper from more than 200 million years ago, older than the flowers these creatures would one day come to love. To hold such knowledge is to feel the strange long reach of time, for those scales were shed by creatures that flew when the great dinosaurs were only beginning their reign, and yet the same fine architecture of overlapping scales still catches the light on a monarch's wing in an autumn garden tonight. There is something almost unbearably gentle in that continuity, that a thing so fragile should prove, in the end, so enduring. The thread is unbroken. It runs from those dust-fine fossils, through the blooming of the Cretaceous, through ages of ice and warmth, all the way to the small orange wonder that might rest, even now, on a flower near where you sleep. And so we come to the heart of this ancient chapter, to the quiet agreement itself, the silent bargain struck between flower and insect that would remake the forests and meadows of the entire world. There is no contract here, no negotiation in words, only the slow logic of mutual need working itself out across the unhurried generations. The flower offers nectar, a reward freely given. The insect, drawn by that reward, brushes against the flower's pollen and carries it away, dusting it onto the next bloom it visits. And in that small, unthinking act, it weds one plant to another and allows seeds to form that neither could have made alone. Each gives and each receives, and neither intends the gift. There is a kind of grace in this, a generosity built into the very fabric of living things, arrived at not by design, but by the patient accumulation of small advantages over time. This is coevolution, the long dance in which two utterly different forms of life shape one another over time. The flower growing sweeter and more fragrant and more cunningly colored to attract its visitors, the insect growing longer of tongue and keener of sense to claim the reward. Over millions upon millions of years, this silent agreement spread across the face of the earth, and as it spread, it transformed the land itself, filling the once somber green forest with color and scent and the soft, endless traffic of pollinators. The meadows we know, the orchards, the wildflower hillsides, the whole bright tapestry of the blooming world, all of it grew from this wordless partnership between a creature that needed sweetness and a plant that needed to be carried. And when you consider that the very breath you draw, the food upon your table, the fruit and the grain and the quiet abundance of the living land, all rest in some measure upon this ancient pact, you may feel how deeply your own life is woven into a story far older than your kind. You are here, drifting towards sleep on a planet made gentle and green and generous by an agreement no one ever spoke aloud. Let that thought settle softly over you now, like pollen carried on a warm and drowsy wind, as the long story of the butterfly drifts onward toward the ages still to come. Imagine the air of a world warmer than the one outside your window tonight. A thick and humid air that hangs heavy beneath an unbroken green canopy. an air you could almost lean your weight against. This is the Eocene, beginning some 56 million years before our time. A long stretch of warmth when the planet ran a gentle fever and forests of broad-leaved trees pressed all the way to the poles. There was no ice on the northern lands then, only rainforest where today there is tundra, and palms swayed in places that now lie frozen through half the year. Imagine the floor of such a forest, deep in leaf litter and the slow work of decay, the air sweet and rotting and green all at once, and overhead a ceiling of leaves so dense that the sunlight fell only in slow shifting coins upon the ground. Into this greenhouse world, this slow steam bath of leaves and pollen and dripping warmth, the butterflies came into their fullness. They had been waiting at the edges of earlier ages, small and tentative. But now the conditions were perfect, and they spread through the warm forest the way light spreads through water. With the flowering plants exploding into 10,000 new forms, each blossom offering its private store of nectar, the butterflies diversified alongside them, sipping and drifting and laying their eggs upon a widening world of leaves. Each new shape of flower seemed to call forth some answering shape of wing or tongue, a long and patient courtship between plant and insect that has never truly ended, a giving and receiving repeated through uncounted summers. Picture for a moment how unhurried this all was. Not a single one of these creatures knew it was building anything. Each simply lived its few warm weeks, fed, mated and faded. And yet across millions of those brief lifetimes a great family was taking shape, generation laid upon generation, like the slow accumulation of leaf litter on a forest floor. There is a comfort in that thought, that something vast and enduring can be made entirely of small and forgotten lives, none of them straining toward the future, each simply being itself in the warm green present. Among the lineages that rose in this warmth was the family to which the monarch belongs, the Nymphalidae, the brush-footed butterflies. They take that curious name from their forelegs, the front pair reduced and tufted and held folded against the body, too short and too soft for walking, so that these butterflies seem to stand on only 4 legs, while the first pair waits, brush-like, against the chest. It is a small structural quietness, easy to overlook, and yet it marks the whole vast family, from the monarch to the fritillaries to the painted ladies that cross continents. Imagine reaching back through time to the earliest of these brush-footed wanderers, creatures we would half recognize and half find strange, already carrying in their bodies that same folded signature that the monarch carries now. A quiet kinship stretched across an almost unthinkable gulf of years. The first true members of this family begin to appear in the fossil record of these Middle Ages, their presence written not always in the delicate impressions of wings, which only rarely survive, but in the durable grains of pollen they help to carry, and in the scattered remains of the plants their caterpillars learn to eat. Imagine the patience of the scientists who read these traces, lifting from ancient sediment the faint signatures of creatures that lived before there were any eyes to admire them. Reading a story told not in words but in dust and pollen and the ghosts of leaves, decoding a patience that had no author and asked for no reward. And there were eyes of a kind even then, for the colours upon a butterfly's wings were never mere decoration. Consider what those colours are truly for. Lying there in the warm Eocene light, a wing is a page, and upon it evolution has been writing a language for tens of millions of years. A language older than any spoken word, older than song, older than the first creature that ever turned to look at another and understood. Some colours are a warning, a bold statement painted in orange and black that says to any watching bird, "Do not eat me, for I am bitter and I will make you ill." The monarch's own ancestors were learning, slowly, to gather poisons from the plants they fed upon and to advertise that poison openly, trading concealment for a kind of honest threat, choosing to be seen rather than to hide, wearing their defense upon the outside for all the world to read. Other butterflies, harmless and good to eat, discovered that they could borrow this warning without paying its cost, evolving wings that mimicked the colors of their toxic neighbors, wearing a false uniform of danger so that birds, having tasted bitterness once, would leave them too in peace. And there is a third use for these patterns, gentler than warning or deception, for the markings upon a wing also let a butterfly recognize its own kind, a signal flashed in flight that says, "Here, you and I are the same," across the busy green confusion of the forest. Warning, mimicry, recognition. 3 uses for color, woven together upon a single wing, refined across more lifetimes than the mind can hold. There is something steadying in the thought that the brightness of a butterfly is not vanity but speech, a slow conversation conducted in pigment between predator and prey, between mate and mate, carried forward without a single word ever being said, a meaning that no one ever needed to teach and no one ever chose. But the long warmth of the Eocene did not last. Imagine the air beginning, almost imperceptibly, to cool so gradually that no living thing in any single generation could have felt the change. Around 34 million years before our time, as the Eocene gave way to the age that followed, the Oligocene, the planet's gentle fever broke. Ice began, for the first time in a very long age, to gather upon the far southern continent of Antarctica. And as that ice grew, it drew warmth and moisture out of the wider world. The vast, unbroken forests, which had stretched almost from pole to pole, began to draw back toward the equator, breaking into patches, opening into the first grasslands, letting the wind and the open sky into places that had known only shade. For the butterflies, this cooling was not a single catastrophe, but a long and gradual reshaping of where life could be lived, a slow rearranging of the warm rooms of the world. Populations that had drifted freely across a warm and connected world now found themselves pushed into new corridors, following the retreating forests, gathering in pockets of lingering warmth that we might call refugia, the sheltered places where an older climate held on a little longer. In these scattered sanctuaries, separated from one another by widening reaches of cooler, drier land, butterfly populations grew apart. Cut off, each pocket followed its own slow path, and from this patient division new species arose. The way a single voice carried into distant valleys returns over centuries as many different songs. The cooling that might seem only a loss was, in its unhurried way, a maker of variety, a sculptor working with the chisel of separation, patient beyond any human measure of patience, shaping the living world by the simple act of holding its pieces apart. And so, the family spread and split and spread again, each turn of the climate sorting and resorting the living world, until the deep ancestors of the monarch were carried, lineage by lineage, toward the creature that would one day drift past an autumn window, a thread of inheritance drawn unbroken through the cooling and the warming of an entire world. Let your attention rest now upon a single small thing, a thing you could hold in the palm of your hand. In the high country of what is now Colorado, in a place called Florissant, there lies a bed of fine pale shale, the hardened mud of an ancient lake. Long ago, in the early Oligocene, volcanoes nearby breathed out fine ash that settled over the still water, and as it sank, it gently buried whatever had fallen there, leaf and seed and insect, pressing each into the soft lakebed mud, sealing it away from air and rot and time. Among the countless impressions sealed in that stone, the patient hands of fossil hunters have lifted out the wings of butterflies, flattened and faint, the venation still traceable, like the lines upon an old map, the branching rivers of a wing laid bare. And in one extraordinary case, the stone preserved more than shape. It held color. Locked within a fossilized wing from that ancient lake, scientists found the faint chemical traces of the very pigment molecules that had once tinted the living insect. The molecular ghost of an orange that had not been seen by any eye for some 34 million years. Imagine that. A particular butterfly opened its wings one warm morning beside a quiet lake, an orange morning among the cooling forests, and folded them and fell, and the orange of that single ordinary day was held in stone through an unimaginable span of time, waiting without intent to be found. Think of how many autumns have turned since that wing last caught the light. How many times the forests have grown and thinned and grown again. How many quiet mornings have come and gone unwitnessed, and yet the color endured, faithful and silent in the dark, keeping its small bright promise without anyone to keep it for. The monarch that crosses the evening now wears, in a sense, an inheritance unbroken from that buried morning, the same warm signal painted forward across the long cooling of the world. And as the Oligocene deepened and the grasslands widened, the stage was being quietly set for the next great turning, the slow descent toward colder ages still to come. And the butterfly, ancient and patient, drifted on into them as it had drifted into all the ages before. Somewhere in a sunlit meadow, a milkweed plant stands utterly still in the warm air, its broad leaves heavy with a thick white sap that seeps from any wound, slow and pale as candle wax, beading at the torn edge before it dries to a sticky, resinous skin. To almost every creature that crawls or chews across that green expanse, this plant is a quiet warning held up in plain sight. Its tissues are laced with bitter compounds called cardenolides, molecules that interfere with the most basic machinery of the animal body, the tiny chemical pumps set into the wall of every cell that keep a heart beating and a nerve firing in steady, faithful rhythm. An insect that takes a careless bite of milkweed may find its own muscles seizing, its small heartbeat stumbling, its little life faltering and going still in the grass. For most of the appetites in that meadow, the leaf is simply forbidden, a green page written in a language of poison, and they have learned across long, patient stretches of time to recognize its shape and pass it quietly by. And yet the plant is not unloved and not unwanted. It grew that defense for a reason, because somewhere far back hungry mouths found it worth the risk, gnawing it to ribbons, and the milkweed answered in the only way a rooted thing can, by slowly becoming difficult and dangerous to eat. Imagine the patience folded into that, a plant that cannot run and cannot hide, learning instead to fill itself with bitterness, leaf by leaf and root by root, season after unhurried season, until its very sap had become a kind of quiet armor. Into that long, slow quarrel between plant and appetite, a small orange life would one day arrive and change everything that followed. Picture then, deep in the unrecorded past, an ancestral butterfly of the lineage we now call Danos, fluttering on pale wings above the same kind of toxic leaves, and imagine the moment, invisible and utterly unrepeatable, when a single chance arose in the coded text of its body, a mutation, one tiny alteration in the long molecular script that every living thing carries folded inside its cells. changed the shape of a protein deep in that insect's tissues. The very pump that the milkweed's poison had been built across ages to seize and jam. In most creatures, the cardenolide slips into that pump the way a key slides into a lock, turning and holding it fast, freezing the cell mid-motion. But in this one altered lineage, the lock had quietly changed its shape just enough, a slight and accidental rearrangement, so that the poison no longer fitted so neatly, no longer caught and froze the delicate machinery of the body. The caterpillar that carried this small change could chew the forbidden leaf and live, and rise the next morning to chew again. Think of what that meant in a crowded, hungry, competitive world. Here was a banquet that no one else could touch, whole fields of milkweed standing untouched and abundant in the sun, and now a single kind of caterpillar that could feed upon it in perfect peace, free from the press of rivals, free from nearly every other mouth that would gladly have stripped the same green. A door had swung open that had stayed locked to every other appetite in the meadow, and this lineage walked unhurried through it. This was not a plan, not a clever choice made in the span of a single lifetime, but the slow and tireless arithmetic of survival, the ones who could digest the leaf, leaving a few more young behind than the ones who could not, generation laid upon generation, until at last the whole line carried the quiet gift in its blood. Across uncountable breeding seasons, the change settled deep into the monarch's making, written and rewritten and confirmed again, until the toxic leaf was no longer an enemy at all, but a cradle and a home. But the story did not pause at mere survival, for the monarch went on to do something stranger and more elegant still. It did not simply tolerate the poison and pass it harmlessly away unused. Instead, the caterpillar learned to keep it, to gather and hold it close. As it chewed its patient way through leaf after leaf, growing fat and round and banded in its bold rings of black and gold and creamy white, it drew the cardenolides out of the milkweed and folded them carefully into its own soft flesh, storing the plant's own bitter weapon inside its growing body. The toxin that the milkweed had labored to make for its own defense was quietly borrowed, carried onward, hoarded away in the very tissues of the small creature feeding upon it, turned from a shield into a stolen sword. And when that caterpillar at last spun itself away into stillness and hung in its green casket and emerged transformed and dripping, the poison travelled with it across that threshold into the winged adult, threaded through wing and vein and body alike. The butterfly that finally lifted trembling into the open air was, in its own gentle and unviolent way, dangerous to swallow, armed with a chemistry it had never itself invented but had patiently and skillfully taken. Imagine carrying within you the whole defense of the very thing you consume, wearing your meal as your shield, drinking your protection from the leaf, and you begin to feel how deep and patient and intertwined this strange partnership had grown across the ages. A hidden poison, though, is a poor and wasteful protection if no creature alive can know that it is there. A bird that kills and tastes a monarch to learn its bitterness has already destroyed the very thing it might have spared, and the lesson arrives far too late to help that one fallen butterfly lying broken in the grass. And so, across the same long and unhurried reaches of time, the monarch came to advertise itself openly. Its wings deepened and warmed into that unmistakable burst of orange, veined and bordered in clean black, scattered along the edges with small white points like a handful of faint and distant stars. This is no idle accident of beauty, no decoration for its own sake. It is a signal, bright and bold and deliberately made to be seen from across a field, a warning worn openly and without shame in the full light of day. Naturalists give this a name: aposematism, the wearing of vivid colour as a frank and public declaration of danger, and the monarch numbers among its most celebrated and most studied wearers. The pattern says, in a language far older than any spoken word, "Do not eat me, you will surely regret it." And here lies the quiet honesty at the heart of it all. The signal is true, and that truth is its whole power. The butterfly that flaunts those warm colours really does carry within it the bitterness that it so openly promises to any watching eye. A young bird, untaught and hungry, may seize a monarch in its beak and learn the price in a single swift instant, a foul and sickening mouthful that it will not soon or easily forget. From that one unpleasant lesson, the bird forms a lasting memory, and the next time a flash of orange and black drifts idly past on the breeze, it lets the butterfly go untouched. One creature's brief misfortune becomes a lasting shelter for all the others, the warning colour now bound forever in that bird's mind to the taste it cannot abide. The monarch's very brightness, far from marking it as a target, has quietly become its safest disguise, a flag of truce written plainly in pigment and in trust. Yet wherever there is an honest signal sounding clearly, there will always in time come the borrower, the one who learns to speak a truth it does not truly own. In those same warm meadows flies another butterfly, the viceroy, somewhat smaller and sprung from a wholly different and unrelated lineage, and yet dressed in colours that echo the monarch so closely that an untrained human eye or a wary and watchful bird can scarcely tell the two of them apart on the wing. The same warm and glowing orange, the same dark dividing veins and bold borders, the same confident announcement painted boldly across the spread of its wings. For a long while, the viceroy was thought to be a simple impostor, a harmless little creature wearing a borrowed costume to frighten off the very birds that had learned to fear the monarch, profiting freely from a danger it did not itself carry. The monarch had paid for its warning in the slow, hard currency of evolved and inherited chemistry, and the viceroy seemed for all the world to fly beneath that same hard-won flag for free, a quiet passenger riding on another's costly reputation. Later and closer study softened and complicated the tale, for the viceroy turned out to carry a genuine bitterness of its own, so that the two are less a thief and its victim than two honest travellers, each vouching for the other, each one reinforcing and deepening the other's shared warning. Either way, the deeper lesson holds firm and clear, that a signal trusted by enough hungry and watchful eyes becomes a kind of shared inheritance, a common tongue, drawing other and distant lives quietly into its widening orbit. Stand back now from the single sunlit meadow and let yourself feel the sheer depth of time lying beneath all of this. The bond between the monarch and the milkweed was not struck in a single summer, nor in a single human century, nor in any span that a watching mind could hold. It was tested and retested and tested yet again, across many millions of patient breeding seasons, each fragile generation a small living experiment, each surviving butterfly a quiet and wordless verdict cast in favour of what worked. The plant slowly pressing its defences higher, and the insect answering it measure for measure, leaf for tolerance, poison for patience, poison and tolerance, leaf and appetite, warning and memory, theft and gift, all of it refined slowly and without haste in the long and tireless workshop of the living world, across a span far longer than our own brief kind has walked upon the earth or turned its face up to the sky. And so, when you next chance to see that small scrap of orange tilting and drifting across a roadside in the soft gold of the late afternoon light, pause a moment and remember that you are watching the living outcome of a conversation far older than memory itself. A truce written patiently in chemistry and in color, still drifting, even now, even here, upon the warm and unhurried summer air. Picture the underside of a single milkweed leaf in the warmth of a late spring afternoon. The light coming through the green, so that the veins stand out like the branching of slow rivers seen from very high above. A female monarch settles there, her wings folding closed with a faint papery whisper, and she curls the tip of her abdomen beneath the leaf with a gentleness that seems almost deliberate, almost tender, as though she understood the weight of the small act she is about to perform. She is pressing a single egg onto the surface, a pale thing no larger than the head of a pin, ribbed and ridged like a tiny ornamented dome, a cathedral in miniature, fixed in place with a glue of her own making that dries within moments and holds against wind and rain. Then she lifts away and drifts to another plant, and another, tasting each leaf with the chemical sensors on her feet, to be certain it is milkweed and nothing else. And over the few weeks of her life she will do this perhaps 400 times, leaving each egg alone on its own leaf, one to a plant, spaced and scattered so that no single hungry mouth might find them all. She will never see any of them hatch. There is no nest, no guarding, no return, no warmth of a body kept close. She offers only this, the right leaf, the warmth of the season, and the careful arithmetic of spreading her hopes thinly across the meadow. And then she lets them go entirely, trusting the green world to do the rest. Imagine the strangeness of beginning a life this way, set down upon a leaf by a mother who has already moved on. The whole inheritance of the species folded into a speck of patterned shell and the milkweed waiting underneath. The future of a creature that may one day cross a continent resting now in something you could scarcely see. Within a handful of days, something stirs inside that shell. A dark dot resolves at one end, the head of the creature forming, pressing slowly against the thinning wall. And then the tiny larva chews its way out into the open air for the very first time. Its first meal is the shell it has just left, eaten clean and methodically, before it turns at last to the leaf itself. And here begins the second of the monarch's lives, the life of the caterpillar, whose entire purpose, whose single and undivided occupation is to eat. It is a feeding machine banded in pale yellow and black and white, soft and slow and almost without defense, with a pair of slender black filaments waving at either end. And it does very little but consume the milkweed on which it was laid. Consider what that leaf contains. The bitter cardiac compounds that would sicken nearly any other animal, the milky sap that gums the jaws of lesser feeders, the toxins the plant evolved precisely to keep itself from being eaten. The caterpillar simply takes them in and keeps them, storing the poison in its own tissues, turning a weapon into an armor, building its body out of the very thing that should have been its ruin. It eats through the day and through the night, resting only to grow, pausing now and then in perfect stillness before bending once more to the leaf, and it grows so quickly that its own skin cannot keep pace. A caterpillar's outer covering does not stretch the way ours does. It is a fixed casing, a suit that cannot be let out, and so to get larger, the creature must shed it entirely. 5 times across roughly 2 weeks it stops, fastens itself down to a small pad of silk, and splits the old skin along its back, easing free in a soft new covering that it has already grown beneath, often turning afterward to eat the cast-off skin as well. Each of these stages has its name, an instar, and with each one, the caterpillar emerges a little longer, a little broader, its stripes a little brighter and more vivid against the green. Imagine doubling in mass and doubling again, until from that first nearly invisible hatchling, it has become a plump and vivid thing, many thousands of times its original weight, all of it drawn out of milkweed leaves and the warmth of the sun, a small alchemy of leaf into living body. There is something restful in a purpose so complete, a life with nothing in it but eating and growing and the slow, patient widening of the body. No decisions, no distances, no doubt. Only the leaf and the next leaf and the next. The world narrowed to the reach of a single mouth. And then, when it has eaten enough, when some quiet signal within it says that the time of feeding is over, the caterpillar does a remarkable thing. It stops. It wanders away from its feeding place, sometimes a surprising distance, crossing open ground. It has never crossed before, searching out a sheltered stem or the underside of a beam or a quiet sprig of leaves. And there it spins a small button of silk and grips it with the very last pair of legs at its tail. It lets go with everything else and hangs, head downward, curled into the soft shape of a letter, and it waits. After a day or so, in that hanging stillness, the skin splits one final time, peeling upward toward the point of attachment. But what works free now is not another, larger caterpillar. It is the chrysalis, a smooth, sealed case of the palest jade-green, ringed near the top with a line of small golden points that catch the light like flecks of beaten metal, as though the creature had hung jewelry upon its own door. From the outside, it is one of the most serene objects in the living world, hanging motionless on its slender thread, swaying only when the air moves, giving no sign at all of what is happening within. And what is happening within is among the most improbable things that evolution has ever arrived at. Inside that quiet green case, the caterpillar is, in a real sense, coming undone. Much of the body it spent 2 weeks building dissolves into a kind of living broth, the old muscles and structures broken back down almost to their beginnings, unmade into the raw materials from which they came. But it is not chaos, and it is not destruction for its own sake. Carried through this dissolution are small organized clusters of cells, set aside earlier and held quietly in reserve, sleeping through the feeding life and waiting for this hour. And from these, the new creature is rebuilt. Wings where there were none, long jointed legs, the great compound eyes, the coiled drinking tube of the adult, the slender body of a butterfly assembled out of the melted remains of a crawling worm. Imagine that for a moment as you lie here in the dark. A body taken almost entirely apart and made again into something that can fly. The same life carried unbroken across a gap so wide, it seems it ought to be two separate beings, one ending and another beginning, and yet a single thread of self running quietly through it all. The deep machinery for this transformation is older by far than the monarch itself, inherited from insects that were folding and remaking themselves in this way more than 250 million years ago, long before there were any flowers at all to feed on. A patience written into life across an almost unthinkable reach of time. After a week or two, the green of the case grows clear, the color draining from the walls, and through its thinning skin, the orange and black of folded wings begins to show, pressed close like a painting glimpsed through frosted glass. Then, on a still morning, the chrysalis splits a final time, and the adult monarch eases itself out into the air. But it does not yet look like the creature we know. Its wings are small and damp and crumpled, soft as wet paper, folded against a swollen body, and it clings to the empty case with trembling new legs while its body sets to work. It pumps fluid, a clear insect blood called hemolymph, out from its swollen abdomen and into the fine branching veins of the wings, and slowly, almost too slowly to see, those crumpled flags unfold and spread and stiffen, broadening into the wide stained glass panels of orange, divided by their black veins and bordered with white spotted black. The color seems to deepen and warm as the surfaces dry, gathering richness with every passing minute, and the butterfly hangs there for an hour or more, opening and closing the wings with great care, testing them, letting the morning air do its slow and gentle work, until at last the membranes are firm enough to carry it, and it lifts away for the first time, weightless, into a world it has never seen. From a speck on a leaf to a flying thing the color of autumn, all in the space of a single month. And yet, not every monarch lives the same length of life. Through the warm heart of the summer, the adults that emerge are creatures of a single bright season, living only a few short weeks, drinking nectar, finding mates, laying their own pale eggs on milkweed, and giving way to the next generation almost at once, so that several such generations may pass across one summer, each brief and golden and complete in itself. But as the year turns toward autumn and the light begins to shorten and the nights grow cool, the monarchs that emerge are different. They are born into a kind of waiting, their reproduction held quietly in abeyance, their bodies tuned not for a single meadow, but for an enormous journey and a long sleep. A generation that may live many months, where its parents and grandparents lived only weeks, that will fly distances those others never dreamed of. Two such different lifetimes, the brief and the long, folded into one species, the same wings and the same orange, shaped by nothing more than the angle of the coming light falling on a caterpillar that could not know what it was deciding. For now, though, let the image settle and soften. A new butterfly drying its wings in the early sun, in no hurry at all, while the long road that some of its kind must travel still lies far ahead and quietly out of sight. Imagine the slant of an October sun, low and golden, pouring across a field somewhere in southern Ontario. A monarch lifts from a stand of late asters and turns, almost without thinking, toward the southwest. There is no map pinned to the sky, no signpost hung in the air, and yet the direction is wholly certain, settled long before the wings first opened. The butterfly holds that heading for hours, correcting for the drift of the wind, keeping the sun in a particular place over its shoulder. To do this, it must solve a problem that has puzzled human navigators for the whole of our history. The sun does not stay still. It rises in the east, climbs through the southern sky, and sinks toward the west, moving steadily across the heavens through the course of a single day. A creature that simply flew toward the sun would wheel in a slow circle, chasing a light that never holds its place. The monarch does not wheel. It flies a true and steady line, hour upon hour, and the secret to that steadiness lies in a structure so small you would need a lens to see it clearly. A clock ticking quietly inside the butterfly's own antennae. For a long time, the antennae were thought of mainly as instruments of smell, feathered wands for tasting the air, for finding a flower or a mate on the breeze. But researchers, looking closer than anyone had thought to look, found something far more remarkable hidden within them. Each antenna carries a circadian clock, a tiny molecular timepiece running on a roughly 24-hour rhythm, the same kind of clock that governs sleep and waking in your own body as you lie here now, the same gentle tide that pulls you toward rest as the evening deepens. This clock keeps track of the time of day, and it feeds that information into the monarch's sense of direction. The eyes read where the sun is. The clock knows what hour it is, and together they perform a constant silent calculation, adjusting the compass so that southwest remains southwest, whether the sun is rising at the listener's left hand or setting at the right. The scientists who uncovered this gave it a careful name, a time-compensated sun compass. When they painted over the antennae of test monarchs, blocking the light from reaching those small clocks, the butterflies lost their bearings, drifting off course as the day wore on, no longer able to subtract the sun's travel from their reckoning. The clock kept time but could no longer speak to the eyes, and without that quiet conversation, the heading came undone. The clock and the compass, it turned out, were bound together as one instrument, each meaningless without the other, two halves of a single quiet genius. Picture the sky on a softer day, when the sun is not a clear disk, but a brightness diffused behind a thin veil of cloud. To a human eye, the sun might seem lost, its position a guess, the whole dome an even and featureless grey. The monarch is not so easily blinded. Its eyes are tuned to kinds of light our own eyes cannot perceive. They read ultraviolet, the high invisible end of the spectrum, a colour beyond violet that we have no name for in our seeing. And they read the polarization of light, the particular way that sunlight, scattered through the atmosphere, becomes organized into patterns across the dome of the sky. When light passes through the air, its waves take on a hidden order, an alignment that ripples outward from the sun in great concentric bands. Even when the sun itself is hidden, these patterns of polarized light still wheel across the heavens in a predictable arc, an invisible grain in the air that points, for those who can see it, back toward the source. The monarch reads this grain the way you might read the lay of fur beneath your hand. A band of specialized receptors along the upper edge of each eye drinks in the polarized ultraviolet light and hands the bearing to that same internal compass. So the butterfly can hold its course through haze and thin overcast that would leave a human traveler standing still, waiting for the clouds to part, unsure which way to step. It is a way of seeing the sky as a single luminous instrument, every quarter of it carrying a clue, every band of scattered light a quiet bearing, the whole bowl of heaven written over with directions in an ink we cannot see. Where we would find only soft grey emptiness, the monarch finds a page it can read, and it goes on reading, wingbeat after wingbeat, southward through the muffled light, never once pausing to wonder how it knows. And yet the sky is not the only thing the monarch may be reading. There is evidence, gathered patiently over years, that the butterfly carries a second sense, one that doesn't depend on light at all, a sense folded so deeply into its body that the creature itself can have no awareness of it. Within the monarch's body, researchers have found traces of magnetite, minute crystals of iron oxide, the same mineral that draws a compass needle toward the pole, the same dark stone that early travelers once hung on a thread to find their way. These crystals appear to give the monarch a sensitivity to the Earth's magnetic field, the vast invisible web of lines that arcs from one magnetic pole to the other, and threads through every living thing without our ever feeling it, passing through field and forest, and through the small bodies of butterflies. In darkened laboratories where no sun and no polarized sky could guide them, monarchs still oriented themselves, faithful and unhurried, when an artificial magnetic field was placed around them. And when that field was slowly reversed, the butterflies turned, patient and certain, to follow it. The magnetic sense seems to work best with a particular kind of light to wake it, a quiet partnership between the eyes and the iron within, as though the one cannot speak without the other to listen. It is most likely a backup, a secondary cue held in reserve for the grey hours and the overcast days when the sun compass falters and the sky gives nothing away. Imagine carrying, without knowing it, a needle that always feels the pull of the pole. The monarch may carry exactly that, woven into the very chemistry of its small body, an instinct deeper than thought, a compass it was never taught to read and yet never sets down, humming faintly beneath everything it does. All of this, the clock in the antenna, the eyes that read invisible light, the iron that feels the planet's field, would be wonder enough on its own, a single creature holding 3 instruments at once. But the most astonishing thing about the monarch's navigation is not how it finds the way. It is that the butterfly making this journey has never made it before. The monarchs lifting from the fields of Canada and the northern United States in autumn are not seasoned travelers returning to a place they remember from some earlier year. They are, every one of them, first-time migrants. Several short-lived summer generations have lived and died since the previous winter, each one passing through only weeks of life, none of them ever flying south, none of them ever feeling the cold draw them down the continent. The individual now turning toward the southwest hatched only a month or 2 earlier, in a meadow it will never see again, among milkweed it will not remember. It has no parent to follow, no flock of elders to fall in behind, no memory of the mountains where it is bound, no story told to it of the long road ahead, and still it knows the way. The map is not learned. It is inherited, carried in the genome itself, written into the architecture of the brain and the antennae before the butterfly ever spread its wings. A set of instructions handed down across generations like an heirloom whose meaning is only understood in the using. Consider what that means as you lie here drifting towards sleep. Somewhere in those few 100,000 cells is an instruction for a continent, a direction, a distance, a destination none of the messenger's recent ancestors ever reached, a longing for a forest the butterfly cannot picture and will know only when it arrives, a homecoming to a place it has never once called home. The proof of this inheritance lies in the tagging. For decades, careful hands have caught monarchs on the wing and pressed a tiny circular sticker, lighter than a flake of ash, onto the underside of a hindwing, each tag printed with a small number and a way to report it. Volunteers across the north have tagged butterfly after butterfly through the autumn. Gentle work, done in fields and gardens and along the shores of the Great Lakes, the insect held softly between 2 fingers and then let go, lifting away to rejoin the southward drift. Then the waiting begins, and the waiting is long, measured not in hours, but in slow turning weeks. And 6 weeks later, more than 3,000 kilometers away, in the high oyamel fir forests of Michoacán in central Mexico, someone walking among the overwintering colonies finds one of those tags, a butterfly marked in Ontario, now clustered on a fir branch in a particular grove on a particular mountainside, in the same patch of forest its kind has returned to for longer than anyone can measure. Think of it. A creature that had never left Canada had found, across the breadth of a continent, a single forest it had never seen, on a slope it could not have imagined, guided by a clock it could not read and a map it had never been taught. The tag that began its journey in a northern garden ends it on a sunlit branch among millions of its kind. Every one of them arrived by the same impossible reckoning, the same inheritance carried quietly through the body. Let that settle over you now, soft as dusk falling on a field of asters, as the butterfly holds its quiet line toward the south, and let your own thoughts drift gently down the same warm and certain path, toward rest. There is a coolness that settles over southern Ontario in the closing days of August, a first thin edge of autumn slipping quietly into the warm gold of the afternoons, and in the wide fields where goldenrod has turned the roadsides and the fallow corners into low rolling waves of yellow, the monarchs begin to lift. They do not leave all at once, and there is nothing hurried in the way they go. A few rise in the late morning when the slow sun has finally warmed their wings to the temperature that lets them fly. Then a few more as the hours open, until the air above the goldenrod holds a loose, drifting scatter of orange, each butterfly tilting and settling and rising again, sipping the last thin sweetness from the season's failing flowers. Imagine standing at the edge of such a field in those days, the tall grasses dry and whispering against one another, the light gone soft and amber and long, and watching these small travelers gather without a single sound, without alarm, without any sign that they understand what lies ahead of them. They are the migratory generation, the long-lived ones born in the closing weeks of summer, given a span of months where their parents and grandparents were given only weeks, and something old and certain in them has already turned its face toward the south. Over the slow days that follow, these scattered risings begin to join and to thicken. The monarchs move steadily toward the great grey water of Lake Erie, and all along its northern shore, they collect in the lakeside trees, hanging in heavy clusters from the branches like dry leaves that have somehow forgotten to fall, folding and unfolding their wings in the cool of the morning, waiting with infinite patience for the wind and the warmth that will carry them out across the open water. When at last the morning is right, when the air is warm and the wind sits kindly behind them, they cross a loose and shimmering river of orange strung out for miles over the slate-coloured waves, and on the far southern shore they descend once more into the meadows and the fields, and the long journey is at last and truly begun. To carry so small and so fragile a body all the way across a continent would seem to ask an effort that no butterfly could ever hope to give. And so the monarch, in its old wisdom, does not attempt to fly the whole great distance by the steady labour of its own two wings. On a clear and settled day, the warming ground gives up its heat, and the heated air rises from it in invisible columns, slow, soft towers of warmth lifting unseen from a sunlit pasture, from a south-facing slope, from the dark-turned earth of a ploughed and resting field. The monarch finds these gentle rising columns as the soaring hawk and the circling vulture find them, and it sets itself within them and begins to circle, climbing without a single beat of its wings, spiraling higher and higher upon the warm, slow breath of the land beneath it, until it has risen many hundreds of feet, sometimes more than 1,000, into the cooler and thinner air above the fields. And from that hard-won height, it tilts and sets its wings and begins to glide, sliding gently southward on a long and shallow descent, crossing miles of open grassland and woodland edge on borrowed lift alone, asking nothing of its own small muscles, until it comes at last to the next rising column of warm air and climbs once more into the patient sky. In this quiet way, the whole journey becomes a long, unhurried series of shallow falls strung between slow climbs, a riding of the air rather than a fight against it, and a creature that weighs almost nothing at all comes to spend almost nothing of itself to travel a very great and improbable distance. Imagine the patience that this asks, the deep willingness to wait upon the warmth of the rising day, to trust the air, to let the land itself do the heavy lifting, while the small body simply holds its course and rests upon the wind. There is a kind of quiet genius in it, a way of moving through the world that takes only what is freely given. Yet the warm and lifting air alone, generous as it is, cannot keep a living body moving across the whole breadth of a continent. Even the most efficient and effortless glide must burn a little of something. And so, the monarch must come down to feed, again and again and again, all the long, slow way south. The Great Migration follows the blooming of the late wildflowers, an unbroken corridor of nectar laid down across the middle of the continent by the slow turning of the season itself, through the last of the tall grass country and the wide farmlands of the American Midwest. The goldenrods and the asters open in their countless thousands, deep purple and burning gold against the fading and exhausted green of the year, and the monarchs drop down into them gratefully to drink. The nectar they gather is far more than a simple meal for the passing moment. The migratory monarch must lay down fat within its small body, a hidden store of carried energy, for the journey is very far from over when at last it reaches the gentle warmth of the south, and the long, still cold of the coming winter will ask it to live for many months upon nothing more than what it has managed to save along the way. So it drinks, and it climbs, and it glides, and it drinks once more, threading its slow and careful way down through the very heart of the continent, along that unbroken ribbon of autumn flowers, and where the flowers begin to fail. There the weary travellers falter and fall behind. The whole great living movement leans its full weight upon these last late blooms, upon the asters by the dusty roadside, and the goldenrod in the unmowed and forgotten corners, small ordinary plants that go almost unnoticed through the green abundance of summer, yet that become, for a few short golden weeks of autumn, the very stepping stones of an entire continental crossing. As the long corridor of land narrows steadily toward the south, the broad river of wings begins to gather itself and to press together. The shape of the land itself funnels them inward. Through the wide and open middle country, the monarchs may spread themselves across many hundreds of miles of farmland and prairie, a thin and scattered drift no eye could ever hope to count. But as they move down through the southern plains and bend toward the long curve of the Texas coast, the geography of the continent draws them ever inward, and the loose, scattered drift becomes a gathering, and the gathering becomes a great and pressing concentration. Along that Texas coast, in the last warm weeks of the migration, the numbers swell into something that strains and overflows the ordinary imagination, millions upon countless millions of monarchs compressing into a single narrow coastal corridor, pouring steadily south toward the Rio Grande and the dry border country that waits beyond it. There are still days in autumn when the trees of that low coast hang heavy and bowed with them at dusk, every branch and every twig furred soft and thick with the folded velvet of resting wings, and at the first grey light of morning they pour upward all together and stream away to the south in a slow-living current that a person may stand quietly beneath and watch passing overhead for hour upon unbroken hour. Imagine that sight if you can, a whole wide sky given over entirely to a single small and fragile creature, a silent tide of orange flowing steadily toward the distant blue mountains of the south. And then they reach and cross the great river, the Rio Grande itself, and pass over into the far country that holds their secret winter home, still flying, still patiently drawn forward by an inherited map that no single one among them has ever once read or seen before. The sheer distances that such a journey covers are very difficult for the mind to hold and to truly believe. A single monarch, riding upon a strong and favourable wind, has been carefully measured, covering fully 80 miles in one single day. Picture that, if you can hold it, a living creature so impossibly light that it weighs less than an ordinary paperclip, less than the smallest thin coin in your pocket. Crossing 80 long miles of open and unfamiliar country between one sunrise and the next, lifted and carried and sped along upon a strong steady wind blowing out of the cool northwest. The whole journey from the goldenrod fields of the far north to the silent fir forests of the distant south may run to very nearly 3,000 miles, and the monarch flies it all upon two wings made of nothing more than paper-thin overlapping scale, upon a small body so light that you could not even feel it should it choose to land upon the back of your open hand, sustained the entire way by wildflowers and rising warm air and an old, deep, unspoken certainty of direction. We who are so very much larger, who cross such distances sealed and cushioned inside metal and glass and scarcely feel the miles as they slip away beneath us, might well pause for a long moment at the simple thought of it. Here is a living thing far smaller than a single fallen leaf, setting out entirely alone across a vast continent it has never once seen, asking nothing of the world but sunlight and nectar and the patience to wait for a rising wind. There is something in that long, lonely journey that quiets and stills the busy mind, the sheer improbable persistence of it, the gentle way that so fragile and so small a traveller keeps unwavering faith with a root that was written deep into it, long before it was ever born. And so the great river of wings moves on and on through October, thinning and gathering and thinning once again across the broad middle of the land, each small and silent flyer carried ever south upon the slow and certain turning of the year, toward a deep stillness it has never known and cannot imagine. The mountains are waiting for them now, and the secret forest folded within them, and the long grey quiet that the whole long journey has been gently bending toward from the very first. But that is a place for the next chapter to softly enter, as the worn travellers cross at last into the high blue country of the south, their wings grown thin and faded, and their old direction sure, descending slowly now toward the dark sheltering trees that have always, year upon year, received them home. High in the mountains of central Mexico, in the state of Michoacán, there is a forest that begins where the ordinary world seems to end. Climb to 3,000 meters into the thin, clear air of the volcanic highlands, and you reach the realm of the oyamel fir, a tall, somber, dark-needled tree that grows only in a few scattered groves along the spine of these mountains, in a narrow band of altitude and moisture and shade that exists almost nowhere else on Earth. The air here is cool and faintly resinous, sharp with the smell of fir and cold stone, and the light comes down in slow shafts between the trunks, falling in pale columns through the green dark. This is a place built by elevation and weather into something rare, a microclimate, a small private climate held within the larger one, cool enough to slow a butterfly's racing metabolism almost to stillness, yet sheltered enough that it never quite tips into killing frost. Lower down the mountain, it would be too warm, and the monarchs would burn through their stored fat too quickly. Higher up, above the tree line, it would be too cold and too exposed, and they would freeze on the open rock. Only here, in this thin ribbon of fir between the warm world below and the bare stone above, do the two dangers cancel out and leave a narrow door through which a fragile life can pass a winter. For the monarch, after the long journey south that carried it over the Great Lake and down the funnel of a continent, this thin green ceiling of fir is the destination, the still point at the end of the falling. Imagine arriving here as the monarch arrives, on tired wings, out of the bright open sky and into this deep cathedral hush, and finding, against all the odds of so small a body crossing so vast a distance, exactly the cradle it was made for. The oyamel forest is not a place the monarch chose by reason. It is a place its ancestors found and its descendants inherited, written into them the way the southward heading is written, so that generation after generation the butterflies pour into these same few hectares of mountain fir, as though the trees themselves were a memory the species carries in its blood. And what they make of these trees, once they arrive, is one of the quietest spectacles in all of nature. The monarchs do not scatter, they gather. They settle onto the fir branches by the thousand, and then by the tens of thousands, and then by numbers that stop meaning very much as numbers at all. Millions of butterflies clustering on a single grove, layering themselves over one another along the boughs until the wood disappears beneath them. A branch that in summer would hold a few birds now carries a weight of living wings so dense that it bends slowly downward under the load, sagging the way a branch sags under wet snow, drawn earthward by the patient accumulation of so many small bodies. From a little distance, the firs seem to have grown a strange new foliage, a deep rust and amber drapery hanging in folds from every limb, stirring very slightly, breathing. Come close, and the illusion resolves into countless individual creatures, wings folded and overlapping like roof tiles, each one holding to the one beside it, the whole mass a single quilted skin of orange and black, and the soft grey of closed underwings. When a stray shaft of afternoon sun finds the cluster, a patch of it may loosen and lift, a sudden swirl of colour spilling into the air before settling once more, and the boughs seem for a moment to catch fire and then go quiet again. A living curtain, draped over a forest, made of beings that each weigh less than a sheet of paper, and yet together heavy enough to bow the timber that holds them. There is a strange tenderness in the sight, in the way these fragile travellers, having crossed a continent alone on the wind, choose at the end of it not solitude but the warmth of one another, packing close as if some old wisdom told them that survival here is a thing they can only manage together, that the cold which would take any one of them alone can be held at bay by all of them at once. To live this way through a whole winter, the monarch must become something other than the restless flutterer of the summer meadow. It enters a state called diapause, a deep, deliberate pause in the machinery of its own life. In the warm months, a monarch lives fast and briefly. It hatches, it feeds, it breeds, and within perhaps 6 weeks it is gone, its small flame burned bright and spent. But the generation that flies to Mexico is different from the start. It is born in the shortening light of late summer, with its reproductive development held in suspension, its body chemistry tuned not for haste but for endurance. It does not seek a mate. It does not lay eggs. It banks its energy instead, slowing everything down, drawing on the fat it has stored from 1,000 roadside flowers along the way. And on that frugal economy, it lives not 6 weeks, but 7 or 8 months, long enough to make the journey south, to wait out the cold, and to begin the journey north again when the season finally turns. Diapause is the monarch's way of stepping outside of ordinary time, of folding a whole winter into the long, single breath of one extended life. There is something in that worth resting on, here in the quiet. A creature so fragile, so brief in its usual habit, can, when the moment demands it, slow its own clock and stretch a few weeks of life into the better part of a year. We tend to think of time as a fixed river, carrying everything along at one unvarying speed. The same for the mayfly and the mountain. The monarch knows otherwise. It can throttle the current of its own being down to a trickle and outlast a season that would kill the hurried. waiting in a hush so complete that its tiny heart slows almost to silence. And perhaps there is a small comfort in that for us as well, who so often feel hurried by our own brief span. The knowledge that even the most delicate life holds within it the patience to wait, to endure, to keep faith with a spring it cannot yet see, and to trust that the long dark is not the end of the story, but only the middle of it. And the forest helps it do so, for the oyamel grove is not merely a roost, but a buffer, a great slow regulator of warmth and cold. The dense canopy of fir holds a blanket of air beneath it, trapping the day's mild heat and releasing it gently through the night, so that the temperature inside the grove swings far less than the temperature outside. On the coldest clear nights, when the open mountain slopes plunge well below freezing and the stars burn hard and close in the thin air, the air among the clustered butterflies hangs only a degree or two above zero, cold enough to keep them deep in their torpor, conserving every spark of stored fuel, but just shy of the lethal frost that waits beyond the trees. On the mild, bright afternoons, when the sun might otherwise rouse them and burn their reserves, the same canopy and the drifting mountain fog keep the grove shaded and cool. The warmth held just below the threshold that would wake them too soon and squander what they cannot replace. The fog that so often pools in these high valleys is part of the bargain too, a soft grey ceiling that moderates the swings, beading the wings with moisture the butterflies can drink, settling over the grove like a second roof drawn across the first. The forest, in short, does for the monarch what the monarch cannot do for itself. It holds the world steady, keeping the cold from becoming death and the warmth from becoming waste, through all the long months of waiting. Strip these trees away, and the shelter goes with them. The bare slope would freeze the clusters on a hard night and squander them on a warm one. The careful arithmetic of survival undone in a single careless season. The monarch's survival is stitched, thread by thread, into the standing of the firs, so that to speak of saving the butterfly is really to speak of saving the forest, the two so bound together that neither can be imagined alone. A reminder, gentle and plain, of how much of any life depends on the quiet endurance of the things around it, the unremarked shelter we so rarely think to thank. And if you could be there among the trunks as the light begins to fail on a winter evening, you would learn that this enormous gathering of life is almost entirely silent. There is no chorus here, no buzzing, no song. For most of a cold day, the clusters hang motionless, and the only sounds are the wind high in the canopy and the slow drip of fog from the needles onto the deep, soft litter below. But as the sun sinks and the temperature begins to drop, something stirs. The butterflies that had spread their wings in the afternoon warmth begin to close them and shuffle inward, pressing closer to one another against the coming cold, each small body seeking the heat of its neighbors. And across the whole grove, from every laden branch at once, there rises a sound almost too faint to name. A dry, papery whisper, the rustle of a million wings folding and settling and brushing against a million others. It is the softest sound a multitude can make, less like an animal than like rain beginning, or like a page turned somewhere far off in a vast, still room, or like a long, slow breath drawn through the whole standing forest. Stand in it, and you feel less that you are hearing a forest full of insects than that the forest itself is breathing out slowly as the dark comes down, and you find yourself holding still, half afraid that any sound of your own might disturb so fragile and so vast a piece. And then it fades, and the grove goes quiet again, the clusters drawn tight, the cold settling over them like a held breath, the whole astonishing assembly waiting in the dark, patient and trusting and unhurried for a spring that is still, from here, a long and patient way away. In the highlands of Michoacán, February arrives not with a single signal, but with a gradual warming, a softening of the cold that has held the forest still for months. The oyamel firs that sheltered the clustered millions begin to feel the strengthening sun, and the air that drifts up the mountain slopes carries the first faint warmth of the turning year. Imagine the temperature creeping upward, degree by patient degree, until something deep within each resting butterfly begins to stir. For all the long weeks of winter, these monarchs have lived in a suspended state, their bodies idling in diapause, their reproductive systems switched off, their metabolism slowed to the barest flicker that life allows. Now the rising warmth reaches into that stillness and turns a key, and the diapause that held them through the cold begins to lift. For the first time in their lives, these butterflies feel the ancient pull toward reproduction, a drive that was withheld from them at birth, and is only now, in the lengthening days of late winter, switched on. It is a remarkable inversion of the usual order of things, for the generation that flew south in autumn was born without the urgency to breed, and only here, on the far side of winter, does that urgency finally awaken. Consider how the cold itself was the guardian of that patience, how the chill of the high forest held their bodies in trust through the dark months, spending nothing, asking nothing, waiting. They mate among the firs and on the warming slopes, the males and females coming together in the dappled light that filters down through the canopy, and the long cycle that seemed to pause in the dark heart of winter quietly resumes its turning. There is a tenderness in imagining it. These worn survivors, having endured so much, given at the last a season of renewal before the end. And so, as the forest stirs, the great journey begins again, not in a single departure, but in a slow unspooling that will carry monarch blood across an entire continent. Picture the first of them lifting away from the overwintering grounds, rising on the strengthening thermals and turning their faces north and east, toward the country they have never seen, but somehow carry within them. These are the same individuals that made the long flight south the previous autumn, now aged and worn, their wings faded and frayed at the edges, the deep orange softened to a paler rust by months of sun and time. And yet they have one final task to complete before their long lives end. They fly north toward Texas, toward the Gulf Coast and the river valleys, seeking the first green flush of milkweed, pushing up through the warming soil of April. Imagine them crossing the dry country, riding the wind across the wide brown land, driven by a hunger not for food, but for the particular plant on which everything depends. For the monarch is bound to milkweed as to nothing else on earth, for it is the only plant on which the female will lay her eggs, the only food the caterpillar can eat. And so, the entire northward expansion of the species is a search for milkweed, a following of its emergence across the breadth of the continent. The worn old travelers reach the southern grasslands, and there, on the tender new leaves, the females lay their eggs in ones and twos, scattering the next generation across the land, each pale egg a small wager on a season the mother will not live to see. Then, their final purpose fulfilled, these long-lived migrants die, having closed the loop that began for them in a northern summer almost a year before, and there is a quiet grace in that ending, a life spent entirely in the service of the journey. But the story does not end with them, for from the eggs they have left in Texas, a new generation hatches into the spring, and this generation is utterly different from the one that came before. These butterflies are born under the ordinary rules of monarch life, with no diapause to suspend them, and no marathon migration written into their bodies. They live fast and briefly, mere weeks from egg to adult and from adult to death, and their whole short existence is given to a single purpose: to push the frontier of the species a little farther north. Imagine them rising from the Texas grasslands as the milkweed greens the country ahead of them, flying north into Oklahoma and Kansas, into the heart of the continent, mating and laying eggs on fresh milkweed and then dying, having lived perhaps 4 to 6 weeks in all. Think of how brief that is, how a whole life unfolds between one flush of leaves and the next, and yet how complete it is on its own terms, wanting nothing, lacking nothing. From their eggs comes the third generation, and from the third sometimes a fourth, each one carrying the expansion onward into Missouri and Iowa, into Ohio and the Great Lakes country, into Ontario and Minnesota, and the cool northern reaches where the summers are short and the milkweed comes late. Each of these summer generations lives only that handful of weeks, a brief, bright candle of a life, flaring and gone before the season has fully turned. And yet, together, like runners passing a baton across a vast relay, they carry the lineage thousands of miles from the Mexican mountains to the Canadian border in the span of a single spring and early summer. No individual butterfly makes the whole northward journey, for none of them lives long enough. The journey belongs to the lineage, not to any single life within it, and that is one of the quiet wonders of the monarch, that a creature so fragile and so short-lived can span a continent by handing the task from one generation to the next, none of them ever knowing the whole of the road they travel. Consider for a moment what guides this great unfolding wave, for the monarchs do not simply fly north at random, scattering across the land. They follow the milkweed itself, tracking its emergence with extraordinary precision as it greens the continent from south to north. Milkweed does not appear everywhere at once. It wakes from the soil in a slow rolling wave that moves northward as the spring warmth advances, emerging first in the southern grasslands and then, week by week, farther and farther north as the season climbs towards summer. Picture the warmth itself moving up the map, like a slow incoming tide, coaxing the milkweed from the ground a little farther north with each passing week, the first shoots unfurling in Texas while the soil of Minnesota still lies cold and bare. And the monarchs move with that wave, their breeding generations advancing in step with the unfurling leaves, so that each new wave of butterflies arrives in a region just as the milkweed there is ready to receive their eggs, neither too early to find bare ground, nor too late to miss the tender growth. The precision of it is hard to fathom, for the timing must be kept across thousands of miles and many separate lives, no single butterfly holding the whole schedule. And yet the lineage as a whole stays in step with the green, generation after generation. Imagine the two patterns laid one upon the other, the green tide of milkweed rising up the map of the continent, and the golden tide of monarchs riding upon it, the insects and the plant moving together in a partnership written deep into the history of both. It is a kind of continental choreography, an enormous slow dance between an insect and a plant, timed across thousands of miles and refined over uncountable generations. And no choreographer arranged it but the long, patient pressure of deep time. The monarchs that arrive in the north are not the same as those that left the south, and yet they are the same lineage, the same unbroken thread of life flowing northward with the green, the memory of the root held not in any one mind, but in the blood and the bodies of the many. And then, at the far end of summer, in the cool northern country of the Great Lakes and southern Canada, something changes once more. The final generation of the year is born into the shortening days and the cooling air of late summer, and these butterflies are made differently from all the generations that came before them in the warm months. They sense the days growing shorter and the nights turning cool, and these signals reach into their developing bodies and switch off the drive to breed, holding them in the suspended state of diapause, just as their great-grandparents were held the autumn before. These are the long-lived ones, the migratory generation, built not for a few quick weeks, but for many months of life, primed to fly south across the whole continent and to wait out the winter in the very forests their ancestors left in spring. They will live perhaps 8 or 9 months where their summer parents lived only weeks, and they will undertake the immense southward journey that the others never knew, carrying in their small bodies a map they were never taught, a sense of direction inherited rather than learned. There is something almost beyond understanding in this, that the great-grandchildren of the butterflies who left Michoacán will find their way back to the same few mountainsides, to groves they have never seen, guided by nothing they could have remembered, drawn home across a continent by a longing older than memory. And so the loop closes, or rather, it does not close so much as it continues. For this is a cycle with no true beginning and no true end, a great wheel of generations turning endlessly across the seasons and the continent. The butterfly resting now in the northern goldenrod is the descendant of the one that clustered in the Mexican firs, and the ancestor of the one that will cluster there again, each life a single bright link in a chain that has no first link and no last. And as you lie here in the gathering quiet, you too are a link in such a chain, born of those who came before and giving rise in the long turning of things to those who will come after, carried forward on a current far older and far larger than any single life. The forest in Michoacán empties slowly into the spring, and the great wave begins once more its patient climb toward the north. And somewhere far ahead, the milkweed is already greening, waiting as it has greened for countless springs before this one. Imagine a sky the color of slate, and beneath it a wall of ice taller than any forest, stretching from one horizon to the other, silent except for the slow groan of its own great weight. This was much of North America not so very long ago, in the deep reckoning of the earth, a world of glaciers a mile thick or more, pressing down across the very land where monarchs now drift each autumn. During the long cold of the Pleistocene, the great ice ages that stretched across the last 2.5 million years, vast sheets of ice spread south from the pole, swallowing what would one day become Canada and the northern reaches of the United States beneath frozen continents of their own. The Laurentide ice sheet, as it is called, covered nearly all of the north, a frozen lid upon the world, and where it lay there was no milkweed, no meadow, no fluttering orange wing, only the endless pale glare of the ice and the wind that scoured across it. The summer breeding grounds the monarch knows today simply did not exist. They slept beneath the glaciers unmade, waiting in a future that had not yet come. Picture it gently as you rest. The very fields the butterfly will one day travel were, in that age, buried under ice older than memory, a landscape utterly unlike the warm patchwork of prairie and pasture the monarch crosses now. Where there are wildflowers today, there was only frost. Where there are slow rivers and green verges, there was only the blue-white shoulder of the glacier and the cold breath rolling off it. The light itself was different then, thrown back hard from the snow, and the long winters gave way to summers merely a little less severe, never kind to a creature of paper-thin wings. There was no path north, because there was no north to journey to, only the white silence of the glaciers and the cold wind moving across them, age upon age, with no wing to trouble the air. And yet the monarch did not vanish, for life in the cold ages did not simply end. It gathered and it waited in the warmer corners of the world that the ice could not reach, holding to whatever shelter the long winter of the world still allowed. Far to the south, beyond the reach of the frozen sheets, the land stayed mild enough for green things to hold on, and there the story of the butterfly quietly continued in what is now Texas, and across the highlands and valleys of Mexico. Milkweed persisted through the long glaciation. Small surviving populations tucked into sheltered ground. Refugees that ecologists call refugia. Places where a vanishing world keeps a quiet ember alight. Imagine these southern havens as you breathe slowly. Pockets of warmth at the edge of a frozen continent, where milkweed kept its roots in the soil and its sap in its veins, season after season, through cold beyond cold. Picture a single hillside far from the ice, catching the low winter sun, and upon it the grey-green leaves and dusty blooms of the milkweed standing patient, asking nothing of the world but a little warmth and a little time. The bees still came to it in those sheltered places, and the small lives of the warm country went on while far to the north the great ice held its frozen counsel. And where the milkweed held on, the monarch held on with it, for the two are bound together as closely as breath and air, the one unable to live without the other. The butterfly that could not live in the north lived here, in the unglaciated south, laying its pale eggs upon the same plants its ancestors had always known, drinking the same bitter sap, wearing the same warning orange beneath a sky that, for these long ages, never knew their wandering. There was no great journey then, only the small and faithful rounds of a creature keeping its place, generation after generation, in the last warm rooms of a cold and narrowed world. The whole living thread of the monarch was drawn down and gathered into these southern strongholds, narrowed almost to a whisper, waiting through an age of ice for the world to turn warm again, holding its colour and its quiet patience until the glaciers should at last relent. It is a tender thing to imagine. A whole species kept safe in a handful of warm valleys, the future of all that orange flickering held in trust by a few hardy plants upon the southern ground. And in the slow turning of deep time, the world did warm. Roughly 12,000 years before our own time, the great cold began at last to loosen its hold. The Laurentide ice sheet, that frozen lid upon the north, began to melt and draw back, retreating northward over centuries and millennia, uncovering raw new land, ground scraped bare by the passing ice, strewn with boulders and meltwater, and the long silence of a place that had not felt the sun for ages. Imagine the slow drip and trickle of it, the meltwater gathering into streams, the streams into rivers, the bare earth slowly softening as the warmth crept north a little further with each passing season. First came the mosses and the tough grasses, then the flowers, and the land that had been only white began, faintly, to green. Into this opening world, the green things came creeping back. Milkweed, patient in its southern refuges, began to advance north as the ice withdrew, its seeds riding the wind on their silken parachutes, settling into the newly bared soil, taking root a little farther north with each passing generation. And following the milkweed, drawn by the only plant its young could ever eat, came the monarch. Imagine that slow green tide rising across a thawing continent, milkweed spreading season by season into ground that had been ice, and behind it, above it, the first orange wings returning to skies that had been empty of them for an age beyond counting. The butterfly did not conquer the north. It followed its food home, one milkweed meadow at a time, as patiently as the plant itself, never hurrying, never straying far from the green that sustained it. Each new generation reached a little deeper into the thawed land, and the warm country of the monarch widened, slowly, gently, as the white country of the ice shrank away toward the pole, until at last there were meadows where there had been only frost, and wings where there had been only wind. The migration, then, may be far older than it seems, and stranger and more beautiful for it. For when the monarch lifts from a Canadian field today and turns its small face toward the distant Mexican highlands, it may be tracing a path laid down by that ancient retreat of the ice, following, in a sense, the very corridors along which milkweed first advanced north as the glaciers withdrew. The route the butterfly flies could be a kind of ghost, a memory pressed into instinct, the living echo of a vanished landscape that no eye now living has ever seen. The monarch travels north each spring as its ancestors once expanded north behind the melting ice, and it returns south each autumn toward the old refuges where its line endured the cold, as though some deep thread within it still remembers the way back to the warm rooms of the glaciation. The journey may be, in part, a remembrance of the way the milkweed came. The butterfly still walking, on wings, the long path home from the last ice age. Consider how gently that thought sits upon the heart, that a creature so light, so easily lost upon the wind, should carry within it the shape of a continent's thaw, the memory of where the green things went when the ice let go. It asks for no map and reads no sign we could name, and yet it follows a road uncovered by the melting of a world, a road older than any human footpath, traced and retraced upon the open air. Each autumn the old route stirs again in the blood of the new generation, and the long corridor of the thaw is travelled once more, faithfully, by wings that have never seen the ice and yet still remember its leaving. The path is unmarked and the traveller untaught, and still the way is kept, as a song is kept, though none recall who first sang it. Consider this softly as sleep draws near. The migration is not a fixed thing, carved once and never altered. It is a living record of climate history, a story the Earth has been writing across the monarch for many thousands of years, and is writing still. Each warming and each cooling of the world has shifted the milkweed, and the milkweed has drawn the butterfly after it, so that the route itself is a kind of memory of the changing climate, a moving line that has been redrawn again and again as the ice advanced and withdrew. The path the monarch flies is the Earth's own handwriting, set down in the wandering of a fragile orange wing, revised across the ages as the world grew warm and cold and warm once more. And so, when you picture that long autumn journey, know that you are watching deep time in motion, an ice age still echoing in the turn of a butterfly toward the south, the cold of a vanished world still gently guiding the way. The same warming that opened the land to milkweed also opened it to us, to the fields and farms and quiet roads we know. The monarch's road and our own were uncovered by the same retreating ice, and we share, butterfly and human alike, a world handed to us by the thawing of that ancient cold. There is a quiet kinship in that thought, that the creature drifting overhead and the watcher standing below are both children of the same long thaw, both walking ground the glaciers gave back, both carrying within us the slow shape of a vanished winter. And perhaps that is the gentlest wonder of all, that the same patient turning of the world that gave the monarch its long road has given us the soft and ordinary ground beneath our feet. Rest now in that long, slow thought, and let the ice retreat once more in the quiet of your mind. Picture a different sky now, far from the autumn fields you have been drifting over. Imagine the dry heat of an African savanna at midday, the air shimmering above pale grass, and a butterfly the color of burnt orange moving slowly between the flowers. It is not a monarch, though for a moment you might think it is. It is the African queen, a close cousin, and it carries the same warm tones across its wings, the same unhurried flight, the same quiet confidence of a creature that knows it is not worth eating. Watch how it lingers at each bloom, in no hurry at all, tasting the nectar with an unrolled tongue thin as a thread, while the heat presses down and the grasses bend in the slow wind. All across the warmer parts of the world, butterflies like this one drift through the heat, and almost all of them belong to a single great family scattered through deep time. The monarch you have been following is not alone. It is one branch of a wide and ancient tree, a tree whose roots reach back across continents and across millions of years, and whose other branches still flutter today through Africa, through Asia, through the islands of the southern seas. The scientists who study these butterflies group the monarch and its nearest relatives into a genus called Danos, a name drawn from old mythology, and the members of this genus are spread across nearly every warm region of the globe. Each one tells a version of the same story. Each one has, in its own way, made peace with the milkweed and the poisons that plant carries, turning what would harm another creature into a shield it wears for life. To understand the monarch fully is to see it not as a single wanderer, but as one voice in a far larger chorus, a chorus singing softly across the tropics in colors of orange and black and white. Let your mind travel for a while along these branches, gently, the way a slow current carries a leaf from one shore to another. Consider first the relatives that share the monarch's continents of the old world. In Africa and across much of southern Asia lives the butterfly often called the plain tiger, and despite that name, there is nothing fierce about it. It is a calm, steady flyer, marked in deep orange with black borders and small white spots, so closely resembling the monarch that an untrained eye would hardly tell them apart. You might see one cross a garden wall in the warm dusk of an Indian evening, or rise from a roadside thistle on a slow current of air, the same gentle drift, the same patient grace. The plain tiger is one of the most widespread butterflies in the entire old world, drifting from the edge of the Sahara across the Arabian lands and on through India and into the warm corners of Australia. Like the monarch, the plain tiger feeds as a caterpillar on milkweeds and their kin, and like the monarch, it draws the bitter chemistry of those plants into its own body, wearing it as armor rather than burden. The African queen, that butterfly you imagined over the savannah, is another of these relatives, richer and darker in its orange, and it too leans on the same chemical defense, the same old inheritance passed quietly down the line. Across these continents, the pattern repeats again and again, as though nature had found one good idea and was content to write it out many times over in slightly different hands. A bright warning color, a poisonous childhood diet, a slow and almost careless flight that says to every watching bird, "I am not your meal." Birds learn this lesson once and remember it, and so the butterflies are left in peace to drift among the flowers, season after season, untroubled. The listener far away in another land can take a small comfort in knowing that this gentle arrangement plays out quietly, endlessly, under skies that person may never see, in places whose names they may never learn. Now, let your thoughts drift further, out over a vast stretch of ocean, to the islands at the bottom of the world. In Australia and across the water in New Zealand, there flies a butterfly the people there call the wanderer, and it is quite simply the monarch itself, or near enough that the difference hardly matters. This is one of the most touching threads in the whole family story. Long ago, monarchs from the Americas crossed the Pacific, carried perhaps on storms, perhaps island by island over uncounted generations, until they reached the far southern lands and made a home there. The scientists who trace these journeys believe the crossing happened somewhere between 1 and 2 million years ago, a span of time so deep that the human story had scarcely begun. Think of that for a moment as you lie still, the slow weight of so many years settling softly over you. Long before anyone walked those southern shores to give the butterfly a name, the monarch had already arrived on its own quiet wings, settling into a new world, half a planet away from where its line began. And the milkweeds it needed were waiting, or came to be, so that the wanderer could carry forward the same ancient bargain in a brand new hemisphere. A creature so light it can be lifted by a breeze had crossed the widest ocean on Earth, not in a single heroic flight, but in the slow, patient way that life so often spreads. A little further each generation, a few more wing beats of distance handed down like a gift from parent to child, until one day the impossible distance had simply been covered. No single butterfly knew it was making a journey. Each one only lived its small bright life, laid its eggs, and drifted on, and yet together they reached a shore no one of them could ever have imagined. There is a kind of peace in that thought, the idea that even the most fragile travelers, given enough time, can reach the farthest shores. Let us draw back now and see the whole of the family at once, the way you might see a great tree in winter, every branch bare and clear against the sky. The monarch and the plain tiger and the African queen and the wanderer all belong to a wider gathering that naturalists call the milkweed butterflies, a tribe that spread across the warm belt of the world as the flowering plants themselves spread and diversified through deep time. As the milkweeds and their relatives grew more varied and reached into new lands, the butterflies that depended on them followed, branching and settling and branching again, until the whole tropical world was threaded with their kind. This is not a story of one clever insect, but of a long partnership between plant and butterfly, unfolding slowly across tens of millions of years, each shaping the other in a patient dance neither could have planned. The flower offered food and a place to grow. The butterfly carried pollen and, in time, borrowed the plant's own poisons for its defense. And so, the two were bound together, drifting forward through the ages side by side. The bright warning colors, the borrowed poisons, the unhurried flight, all of these are old inheritances, passed down and varied along every branch of the family, written first in some distant ancestor and copied forward into the present with countless small revisions. When you watch a monarch settle on a flower, you are looking at the living tip of one of those branches, the latest line in a story that began long before there were eyes like yours to read it. And so the monarch takes its place, not as a solitary marvel, but as a single node in a vast and living network, connected by invisible threads of kinship to butterflies drifting at this very moment over African grass and Asian fields and southern island shores. Each of those cousins is telling the same tale in its own dialect, the tale of the milkweed and the poison and the patient orange wings. They have spread across the world along the slow rivers of time, following the flowers, crossing oceans, settling new lands, asking nothing more than a place to lay their eggs and a little sun to warm their wings. Somewhere, as you rest, one of them is opening its wings to the first warmth of a morning you will never see, and another is folding them closed as evening comes to a country on the far side of the earth. There is something deeply restful in that picture. A whole family of gentle creatures scattered across the warm places of the earth, all bound together by an ancestry older than memory, all carrying forward the same quiet inheritance. As you let your breathing slow, you might hold that image lightly in your mind. The great family tree spreading its branches across the continents, the monarch one bright leaf among many, and the long, slow story of all of them drifting onward, far older than us and entirely at peace. Imagine for a moment that you could borrow the eyes of a monarch as it drifts across a meadow in the slow gold of late afternoon. The world you would see is not the world you know, where you perceive a flower as a soft, even wash of pale yellow. The monarch sees something altogether stranger and more beautiful, for its compound eyes are tuned to wavelengths of light that lie entirely beyond the reach of human sight. Ultraviolet, the color that hides just past the violet edge of our own rainbow, pours across the petals of that flower and resolves into patterns we can never witness without instruments. To the butterfly, the bloom is not a flat disk of color at all. It is a target, a landing strip, painted with dark radiating lines and luminous central markings that we call nectar guides, arrows of ultraviolet that point inward toward the sweet reward at the flower's heart. The plant and the insect have been speaking this silent visual language to one another for tens of millions of years, a conversation written in light that no human eye has ever directly read, refined across uncountable summers until petal and eye fit one another like a lock and its key. Each compound eye is itself a marvel of repetition, built not from a single lens like ours, but from thousands of tiny optical units, each one a slender tube capped with its own lens, each pointing in a slightly different direction. Together, they assemble a mosaic of the world, a picture stitched from thousands of separate fragments, low in fine detail by our standards, yet exquisitely sensitive to movement and to the flicker of changing light. A monarch cannot read the expression on a distant face, but it can sense the swift shadow of a bird overhead before the bird itself has fully arrived, and it can track the shimmer of a wing across a wide field of vision that wraps almost entirely around its head, so that it sees behind and beside itself as easily as ahead. Imagine, too, how the meadow must pulse and breathe to such eyes, every nodding grass head and trembling petal alive with the small movements we tend to overlook. And so, the meadow that seems to you a pleasant blur of green and yellow is, to the butterfly, a glittering map of ultraviolet signals and shifting shapes, a place humming with information that your own senses simply cannot collect. Now follow that butterfly as it settles, light as a fallen leaf, upon a broad green blade rising from the grass. Watch what happens in the instant its feet touch down, because something quietly astonishing is taking place. The monarch is tasting the leaf, not with a tongue, not with any mouth at all, but with its feet. Along the slender tips of a butterfly's legs lie clusters of fine sensory hairs, each one a chemical receptor, and the moment those delicate tips press against a surface, they begin to read the chemistry of whatever they have landed upon. For a female monarch, this is a matter of profound consequence, because she is searching for milkweed, the single family of plants on which her caterpillars can feed. As she alights, She drums her feet against the leaf, scratching its surface ever so slightly to release the plant's inner juices. And in that instant, the receptors on her feet tell her whether she has found the right plant. The bitter signature of the milkweed's toxic compounds, the very poisons that will one day armor her offspring against predators, is to her not a warning but a welcome, a confirmation that here, on this leaf and no other, her eggs will have a chance. Consider how strange and how tender that is, that a mother should taste, through the soles of her feet, the precise bitterness that means safety for the young she will never live to see grow. Imagine possessing a sense of taste so immediate and so precise that the simple act of standing somewhere told you, without thought, whether the ground beneath you could sustain the lives you carried. The monarch does not deliberate. She does not weigh the matter. She lands, she tastes, and she knows. And in that knowing lies the whole future of a generation. Lift your gaze now from the feet to the head, to the pair of slender antennae that rise from between the butterfly's eyes and curve gently forward into the air. We tend to think of antennae, if we think of them at all, as simple feelers, as whiskers for brushing against the world. But a monarch's antennae are something closer to a single organ, doing the work of many instruments at once, and they are perhaps the most extraordinary sensory structures the creature possesses. They keep a kind of inner clock, a steady sense of the passing hours that lets the butterfly hold a true bearing as the sun wheels across the sky, so that the antennae serve at once as timepiece and as compass. They are exquisitely sensitive to scent, able to detect the faint pheromone signals drifting on the air, the chemical whispers by which monarchs find and recognize one another across distances that would seem impossible. They register, too, the subtle shifts of barometric pressure, the slow rise and fall of the atmosphere itself, so that the butterfly carries within those two slim wands a sense of the weather's mood, an awareness of the air thickening or thinning around it. We need barometers and screens and forecasts to know what the monarch simply feels, moment by moment, in the quiet apparatus growing from its brow, all of it gathered into structures no thicker than a thread. And there is, perhaps, a sense more remarkable still, one that lies at the very edge of what we have learned to measure. Deep within the butterfly's body, in the slender joints of its legs, and in structures hidden near the base of its antennae, lie tiny receptors called chordotonal organs, stretch-sensitive cells that respond to the faintest vibrations passing through the air and through the insect's own frame. Through these, the monarch may perceive sounds far below the floor of human hearing, the long, low frequencies we call infrasound, the deep rumble that great storms and distant weather systems send rolling silently across the land long before they arrive. Imagine being able to feel, as a soft pressure in your body, the approach of a storm still hundreds of miles away, to sense the slow heartbeat of the sky itself, the great atmosphere turning and shifting like something alive. We do not yet fully understand how much of this hidden world the monarch inhabits, how far its awareness of these silent vibrations reaches, how much it gathers, and how much lies forever beyond our guessing. But it seems likely that the butterfly drifting past your window is listening to a register of the world that falls entirely beneath your notice, attending to the murmur of distant weather as easily as you might notice a change in the light, reading the air the way you might read a familiar page. Consider then, all of this gathered into a single creature lighter than a folded letter. Eyes that read a color you have never seen, feet that taste the ground they touch, antennae that hold a clock and a compass, and a barometer and 1,000 scents, and a body laced with receptors listening to sounds too low for any ear of ours. The monarch moves through a world so layered, so dense with signal and meaning, that our own rich and beloved senses begin to feel, by comparison, like a rough pencil sketch beside a finished painting, the faint outline of a thing rather than the full and shimmering whole. We are not lessened by this. There is a strange comfort in knowing that the small, bright thing crossing the autumn air is alive to dimensions of reality we can only describe from the outside, that the world is fuller and stranger than any one creature, ourselves included, can ever take in. And perhaps that is the gentlest thought to carry with you now, as the day softens toward evening, that all around us, unnoticed and unhurried, countless other lives are quietly drinking in a richness of the world that we will never quite touch, perceiving colors and pressures and far-off murmurs we have no name for, and that this, too, is a kind of wonder worth resting in as the light goes down. Picture, for a moment, a single monarch resting on the branch of an oyamel fir, high in the cool dark of a Mexican winter night. Its wings are folded shut, and in the folding, the bright orange has gone quiet, hidden, leaving only the soft underside the color of dried leaves. The air is still and cold, somewhere near the edge of frost, and the butterfly does not move. Around it, thousands upon thousands of others hang in the same hush, their wings closed, their tiny hearts slowed almost to nothing. The creature you are imagining is barely alive in the way we usually mean the word. Its breath is a whisper. Its body holds itself just above the line of freezing, burning through the last of the fat it carried south, waiting, the way the whole forest is waiting, for the slow return of the light. There is nothing hurried in it. There is only stillness and patience, and the deep, even rhythm of a small life folded down to its quietest setting. Let your own breathing slow to match it, in and out, soft and unhurried, like a wing settling closed. And consider, as you rest there with it in the dark, what this small, motionless thing actually carries inside itself. For within that folded body, no heavier than a dry petal, lives the memory of a conversation that began more than 100 million years ago. It is a conversation between flowers and the insects that visit them, a slow exchange carried out across an almost unimaginable span of time. The first flowering plants offered nectar and color and scent, and the insects answered by carrying pollen from bloom to bloom, and over the long ages each shaped the other, petal answering wing, wing answering petal, until the world filled with both. The monarch on its branch is one late sentence in that endless conversation. Its taste for milkweed, its bright warning colors, the very pattern of its wings, all of these are answers worked out over 100 million years of trial and patience, written not in any book, but in the living body itself, passed down without words from one brief generation to the next. You are holding, in your mind's eye, a small living archive of deep time, and the journey this butterfly makes, the long road south that brought it to this branch, is itself older than the mountains that frame it. Imagine that. The route the monarch follows down the continent each autumn was already ancient when the Rocky Mountains, as they stand today, were still rising into the sky. Generations of butterflies were tracing their inherited map across the land, while the rock of those peaks was being lifted and carved, while rivers cut their valleys, while ice came and went and came again. The migration is not a thing the monarch learned. It is a thing the monarch remembers in the only way a creature without memory can remember, through the slow inheritance of instinct laid down over spans of time so vast that whole mountain ranges have changed their shape within them, when the monarch lifts from its branch in the returning warmth and turns once more toward the north. It is following a path worn into its kind across more years than the human mind can truly hold. And here is the gentle wonder of it, the thread that ties this drifting butterfly to you, lying here in the quiet of your own evening. You, too, are an inheritance. The slow, patient body that carries you towards sleep tonight is itself a long conversation, written across spans of time as deep as the monarch's own, shaped by ancestors beyond counting, each one a brief life that passed something forward. The same old sun that warms the oyamel branch in the morning has warmed every creature that ever lived, and it warmed them all into being across the same unhurried deep time. When you feel small beneath the weight of so many years, remember that you are not separate from them. You are the near end of one of those endless conversations, the way the monarch is the near end of its own. The same long story that made a butterfly able to find a forest it has never seen also made you, lying here, able to wonder at it. So let your mind travel now, softly, with the monarch. Let it lift from its branch and drift south through the slanting amber light of autumn, over fields gone gold, over the slow brown rivers and the dry grass bending in the wind. Let it ride the high, cool air without effort, wings tilting, the warmth carrying it on mile after gentle mile toward the forest waiting in the mountains. There is no hurry in this flight. There is no fear in it. There is only the long glide and the patient road and the certainty of arrival. The deep old knowledge that the way south is the way home. Travel with it as far as you like, until the light grows soft and the branches close around you, until the air goes still and cold and kind, and the wings fold shut, and the waiting begins, and the waiting is itself a kind of rest. And now, as the forest settles into its long winter quiet, let yourself settle too. There is nothing more to do tonight. The monarch is on its branch, and it is sleeping. The forest around it is full of wings, countless wings, folded and still in the dark, and every one of them is sleeping. The mountains that are younger than the journey are sleeping. The flowers waiting under the cold ground for spring are sleeping. The long conversation goes on quietly through all of it, asking nothing of you now, so rest. Let the orange and the autumn light and the deep, slow years drift away like a butterfly carried off on the wind, growing smaller and softer, and at last too far to see. The forest is full of wings, and all of them are sleeping. Sleep now.